Hello and welcome to Boxing in Wales, the YouTube show that gives you a ringside seat to the heart of amateur boxing in Wales. In this show, we're taking you to Pantside for an Eastern Division tournament where we have 9 bouts across a number of age categories. My name's Dewi Powell. I'm delighted to be joined by former amateur boxer, now a trainer and manager in the professionals, Richie Garner. Richie, it's great to have you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
We're back at amateur boxing grassroots today. How fond are these memories for you?
Oh, absolutely painful. But nevertheless, I'm still very interested in amateur boxing. It's great to see people like Gavin Rees giving back to the amateur game. You know, he was nurtured and he was brought along before, obviously, he was taken by the great Enzo Calzaghe, and obviously he had an absolutely fantastic career. And you know, grassroots boxing in Wales has always been something which has grown and flourished, and unfortunately we've suffered a little bit of a detriment due to COVID, but obviously things are back on track, and I think this show demonstrates it.
And we start with GETHING from ABERGAVENNY Amateur Boxing Club at 65 kilograms in his senior bout against SALISMAN from GRANGE Amateur Boxing Club. And this is the action. We're here for a senior bout between GETHING from ABERGAVENNY Amateur Boxing Club and SALISMAN from GRANGE Amateur Boxing Club in Cardiff.
Both fighters trying to establish that jab early. Fantastic jabs from the pair of them. Heads are held a little bit high again. Perhaps need to come over the front foot a little bit. Fantastic shot, and GETHING takes that well, covers up well, keeps his guard nice and high, but he's caught on the ropes and he needs to work off there.
No instinct in him to spoil the action or slow it down, Richie. He's still trading, he's still trying to fight his corner.
Absolutely, yeah, and he's doing it behind the jab, which is lovely. And he's now controlling the distance, and perhaps SALISMAN has blown himself out a little bit. He's perhaps slowed it down a little bit. He swings from the rafters there, though, with the left hook.
And it's in those exchanges where they both throw at the same time, where the biggest damage looks like it's going to come. And there it is. A right hand over the top from SALISMAN.
Absolutely, Khan looking for the right hand, swinging absolutely from his heels with that left hook, and obviously GETHING takes a standing count there, although he doesn't look too shaken. He's quite happy, nodding at the referee, hands are up, and the action resumes.
Another big right hand flies in, followed by a second. Referee might be taking a closer look at this, not because it's a mismatch, but just because they're really going for it and inflicting damage on each other. And there's a left-right combination, followed by a right hand. He can't really miss at this stage with that right hand.
No, GETHING needs to definitely keep that left a bit higher, a bit closer to his face. Sometimes he's pushing it a bit far out in front of him, which is allowing Khan to come around the back of that lead hand and score behind it. Perhaps just needs to keep it a bit closer to his face.
It's enough for the referee on this occasion. A first round stoppage there for SALISMAN from GRANGE Amateur Boxing Club. Richie, a one bout novice, looked far more experienced than that. Very well balanced and patient, although you know what we saw was about 90 seconds. There were some promising signs from his approach.
Yeah, certainly. As soon as he found his range, he was quite happy to let those hands go. Coming out of the crouch when he threw his punches, he definitely looked very composed. Certainly didn't look like a one-fight novice, but nevertheless, as soon as he started finding the mark, let those punches go, and perhaps GETHING trying to work behind the jab, maybe need a bit more authority in that jab, but you know, it was an unfortunate stoppage insofar as I didn't really feel like he was hurt. I'm not sure how you felt about it, Dewi.
Yeah, I kind of feel like in amateur boxing, referees are usually a little bit safer than certainly if you watch the pros than you may be used to. I feel like the shots were big shots and they were landing, but it wasn't like he was in desperate trouble needing rescue. But what, from your perspective, Rich, with your coach's eye, nobody wants to get stopped in the first round, but what lessons can you take from that will maybe benefit you in the future? Because this does happen with inexperienced boxers, especially when they're inexperienced as seniors, where they've got their man strength, and although they're inexperienced, they can still hit.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I think when you are shipping shots like that, sometimes you can panic, and when you look back at this and you've got a different sense of perspective, you can think, well, you know, perhaps I needed to maintain a little bit more composure. Certainly, as I say, just going back to the nature of the stoppage, Gething didn't look glassy-eyed, he didn't look unsteady on his feet. But nevertheless, perhaps he was becoming a little bit unravelled in relation to his composure, and perhaps he'll take something from this and he'll learn from that and sit down, cover up, keep his hands a bit tighter to his face and a bit tighter to his body, and perhaps use some of the old pros tricks, you know, tie the fighter up, turn them, not give up too much of the space of the ring. You see a lot of fighters, they'll turn somebody and they'll skip back about 6, 7, 8 feet and give up half the ring. Certainly that's something that Gething will take from this, I would hope, and maybe next time show a bit more composure, learn to tie the fighter up, turn him and create a bit of space and distance for himself so that he has time to settle into the fight a little bit more. And
technically what we saw from Sullivan, it was I say a patient approach. It was over quite quickly, but he seemed calm in the eye of the storm, didn't he?
He was definitely calm, and he was quite calculated insofar as soon as he found his range, he was throwing those big shots, knowing that they would land, because perhaps Gething had his hands just maybe about 6 inches in front of his face. And as I said when we were analysing the fight, the shots were coming around the back of the guard and finding him. But to say that Khan was sophisticated might be a little bit of a stretch, because it was ruthless, really. And but there wasn't any sophistication to it insofar as on many occasions he was literally swinging from the floor, knowing that he was going to come around the back of the guard and catch Gething. And so there wasn't too much sophistication required. It wasn't like he was coming in behind the jab and setting the shots up. He was just throwing those big shots, knowing they were coming behind the guard and landing them.
For Gething, we kind of talked about how you don't want to get too downhearted with that. It happens.
Yeah, of course.
From Khan's perspective, you don't want to get too carried away with it either. Do you feel like maybe the task for him when he goes back to the gym is to work on refining that attack, so he's not swinging from his heel, so he's a bit more in control when he lets his hands go?
Well, I mean, he is going to come up against opponents, excuse me, who are going to be prepared for that, and perhaps he might catch one of them with a shot. He was coming a little bit out of a crouch with those shots, so it's not like he was vulnerable when he was throwing them. So I'm not going to say he was throwing caution to the wind, because that certainly wasn't the case. But there will be people who can deal with that, who will work around him, not necessarily going backwards and forwards in straight lines. And when the time comes, as you say, you would hope he doesn't get carried away and find himself in a position whereby he thinks, hang on, I'm not used to being here, I've never encountered this before. You know, a good coach will take him to one side and teach him how to set those shots up a little bit better maybe for next time.
Brilliant. In our next bout, we move on to OSAIN Butterfield from ABERGAVENNY Amateur Boxing Club against MILAN from GRANGE Amateur Boxing Club, and this one was another shootout. We're up for a junior bout in this one. OSAIN Butterfield from ABERGAVENNY Amateur Boxing Club facing HIKRO from GRANGE Amateur Boxing Club, and he looks like a really powerful proposition here, Richie.
Marauding forward, however, I will say that I do like the jab that's being worked, and that's something you've got to be very firm with if you want to keep a kid like this off you, and tie him up on the inside. I'm not seeing him tying him up too well, but he's working well at range, working that jab, keeping his guard nice and tight, but the boy from the Grange there throws a lovely left hook and finds the target.
It's a real clash of styles, but you can see Milan really committed to those two-fisted attacks, especially when they near the ropes.
Absolutely, yes, and there's a standing count correctly administered there. Obviously, we're in territory here whereby he needs to work that jab now, make sure it's a firm, authoritative jab and keep him off. Lovely left hand there, fantastic southpaw shot coming from...
You can see from OSAIN, although he is uncomfortable, he is sort of present with what he's trying to do. There is method there.
Oh, absolutely, yes, absolutely. But Milan there, working the body, fantastic. You don't see too much of that in amateur boxing, I've mentioned it before, but he went to the body lovely there, which obviously he's doing to try to bring down the hands.
And that was all the referee needed to see on that occasion. I'm not sure what they're feeding them at the Grange Amateur Boxing Club, but we've got some heavy punches on our hands. Maybe they're not feeding them at all, because they're fighting like hungry boxers, Richie.
Definitely, yeah, very aggressive styles. What I like about Milan is just the way he came forward, aggressive and intelligent pressure. I do think that OSAIN got off to a great start. Southpaw stance, he's working that right hand, and you could tell he was looking to control from distance. but Milan just wouldn't be denied. He worked his way past that jab, sliding left and right, and of course scored with some big shots. And unfortunately for OSAIN, perhaps just not strong enough.
And there was a lot of ring generalship, I think, that you may not see on first glance with this bout, but Milan did a great job of taking it to the edges of the ring, taking it to the corners, and crucially keeping it there as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And another encouraging thing as well, which as I mentioned previously, you don't see too much of, is he wasn't afraid to go to the body, and you could see that was a tactic which he was using to try and bring the hands down to score back upstairs again. As I say, OSAIN just not strong enough. He was desperate to work the jab, and he maintained his composure, but the difference in strength was incredible, and it definitely showed, which is unfortunate because OSAIN does look like a tidy boxer.
It's nice to see body punching come back to amateur boxing, because there were years and years and years when it was in that point system where it was tit for tat, where body punches were very rarely credited unless they were, 1 in a million shots that were probably going to cause a standing count or maybe even end the fight. Those would get scored, but the little taps around the side and even some of the bigger punches for a long time, although they haven't had a strategic purpose, they wouldn't be credited by the judges or the officials. But it's nice to see in this bout that wasn't ignored. That was part of his approach.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, as a youth, I was told to not even bother going to the body because judges wouldn't score it. And nevertheless, Milan let those shots go. They were very heavy shots. And, the way he twisted his body into him, he's really working his shoulders. The punch power was coming from the hips as well. And he looked like a very seasoned boxer.
Continuing our junior fights in Pantside, next up we have KNAPP from Eastside Amateur Boxing Club in Newport, taking on JAYDEN King from LLANRUMNEY Boxing Club in Cardiff. Newport meets Cardiff as KNAPP from Eastside Amateur Boxing Club faces JAYDEN King from LLANRUMNEY Amateur Boxing Club.
The boy from LLANRUMNEY there scoring with a lovely right hand over the top. He's not shy with that right hand because it's scoring freely, and he's not afraid to let it go.
Both kind of settled at mid-range here, Richie. Both also firing off triggers just to try and activate the other one before they go in.
Absolutely. KNAPP needs to perhaps keep his head a little bit down. He's going backwards in straight lines and his chin's a bit high in the air. Perhaps if King just pushes on a little bit and sets up his shots with feints, he'll get a bit more success. He's bullied KNAPP to the ropes there, and as you can see, he's quite happy to go to work. Just having a little word.
And these are the type of valuable lessons that amateur boxers will learn in these stages.
Yeah, again, KNAPP holding his head up and being caught with jabs on the way in.
We go to the judges' scorecards, and we have a unanimous decision. And the winner in the blue corner, JAYDEN King.
And there it is, a unanimous decision for JAYDEN King. 3 entertaining rounds there, Richie.
Absolutely, yes. And we saw glimpses of the aggression. And you had a classic kind of stand-up boxer, maybe a bit more flashy. But it was just one of those fights where it was a perfect clash of styles, which would have made for a very exciting spectacle. So, yeah, very enjoyable fight and the right result.
Southpaw against orthodox as well. It's great to get that experience in so early, isn't it? Because you see, that often at the higher levels, there in amateur boxing, there are a lot of southpaws. Oh,
absolutely, yeah. And it seems to be more prevalent today, right through the system, right through the pros. And it's something which I've experienced. We had Craig Woodruff more recently, who was set up to fight a southpaw, and getting southpaw sparring wasn't difficult. There are many gyms across the country now, and it was something which was greatly discouraged. I mean, amateurs were seen as the amateurs see it as a bit of a scourge, or they did when I was involved in the game, and certainly it was something that was actively discouraged because you have a lot of kids walking in the gym, and your natural reaction is to throw your right hand first. But these days, coaches just kind of accept that, and they're happy to work and train these kids. And frequently, you see these affairs, and they can be very scrappy. Against a southpaw, but that was quite a tidy fight. They weren't falling all over each other. There wasn't the clash of styles was perfect, but it wasn't messy.
Would you put down that sort of technical ability very early on in their amateur careers? Is that taught to them, or is that a bit of natural talent, or both?
I think that when you display the type of talent that they did, that is just natural ability. And some people walk into the gym and they've got it, and others they have to develop it. If you've got great coaches in the gym, and of course there's 2 gyms there with fantastic coaching. It's something which you can learn, obviously, but it's hard work and it's dedication, and maybe not all boys these days have got that. Certainly things have changed a lot since I was a child. There were no Xboxes, there were no PlayStations, and these lads who are prepared to put it in the gym and do the hard graft, take my hat off to them, because there are so many distractions for kids these days. And these 2 lads in particular, showing experience beyond their years, showing experience beyond their bouts, and I tip my hat to them.
That is something to be said, isn't it? Because there used to be the challenging period in amateur boxing was when nightlife or alcohol maybe came into it at 17,
Girls,
18
perhaps.
years old, or girls perhaps, or,
I didn't
or
have
boys
that,
on
I'm
the
not
flip
good
side.
looking enough.
I won't comment on that. Or boys on the flip side now with more girls boxing. But nowadays, even younger than that, there's, like you say, there's so many distractions.
Absolutely.
There are games consoles, there are Uber Eats for people like me, all sorts of things that
People
can
like
distract
us.
them. Yeah, people like us. There are all sorts of things that can distract them, and boxing clubs are such an outlet to be active, to channel that into, you know, real positive thing.
Absolutely, and the coaches of these amateur clubs, bear in mind they don't get paid, they're the unsung heroes of boxing, because they develop the talent which comes through the pro ranks later. They develop the Anthony Joshuas, they develop the Tyson Furies, you know, they develop the Kieran Gethings and the Gary Locketts. And obviously it goes without saying that these guys, you know, they give up so much of their time, they give up so much of their life, and they're to be commended. Genuinely, I say this without any hesitation at all. I'm surprised you don't see more of them in the honours lists, because it is a tremendous sacrifice that they make on a regular basis to turn out kids in what is the hardest sport of all. And not just that, to keep them in the gym and maintain that work ethic. It's incredibly difficult with all these distractions.
Mm-hmm. We are down to a minor bout for the next one. On home turf, Cole Pikulski from Pantside Amateur Boxing Club taking on Paddy Rooney from just over the bridge at Trowbridge Amateur Boxing Club.
1 minute rounds, and your referee is Gareth Connection.
Cole Pikulski from Pantside Amateur Boxing Club taking on Paddy Rooney from Trowbridge Amateur Boxing Club. We're down at 37 kilograms for this one, Richie, but there's plenty of fight in these 2 little lads.
Absolutely, yes. Rooney boxing on the back foot, Pikulski just looking to impose himself, showing plenty of authority. However, Rooney certainly has some great footwork, and Pikulski needs to pick his shots a bit more carefully, otherwise he's going to get picked off
as the rounds go on. We're seeing some very good cat and mouse action from Rooney, and judgment of the distance.
Absolutely, yes. And he's trying to work that jab, I think, from the southpaw stance.
The winner in the blue corner, Paddy Rooney.
Rooney takes a split decision win in a very closely contested affair. What were the attributes from Rooney that stood out for you, Richie, that just got him the nod in the end?
Definitely showed a bit of composure. What I would say in relation to Pikulski, I didn't necessarily feel that he used all the attributes to the best of his ability. He seemed like the bigger fighter, the taller fighter. He was very aggressive, perhaps with the height advantage he had and the reach advantage he had over Rooney. He might have been better, not necessarily boxing off the back foot, but controlling from the centre of the ring and working behind the jab. He had a lovely right hand, which he was throwing in over the top, and perhaps just take the centre of the ring, control from the centre of the ring, double that jab up and throw the odd right hand in just to keep Rooney honest and keep him on the back foot, make sure he doesn't get into the fight.
All amateur contests are condensed, but they're really condensed in this age category, you know, really short rounds. How much will Pikulski have learned that he can now implement, that you've really got to be, you haven't got long to think there?
No, definitely, and you know, that's something his coaches will instill in him. Pantside is an absolutely fantastic gym. We know that there's a real depth of talent in relation to the coaching there, and when he goes back, hopefully what Gavin Rees will be telling him is to use that range to make sure that he controls the distance. Perhaps rather than marauding forward and pressing, use that footwork that he's got and work it behind the jab. And as I say, control from the centre of the ring. He seems to have a tidy right hand, so throw that in over the top and set your shots up with the jab and just control the fight from the centre.
And although visibly disappointed with the result, he can still take real heart from that performance.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, very close fight, and you can make an argument for both boxers. But Rooney walks away with a decision, and Pikulski can learn from that and definitely come back stronger.
Cool. Another representative for Pantside Boxing Club takes to the ring next, but in an exhibition contest due to the weight discrepancy. But great to see both boxers still able to take to the ring. He faces KLAYSON Young from LYDNEY Amateur Boxing Club, just over the border in England.
Please give a welcome to Tom Woodhouse. And in the blue corner, welcoming back our visitor.
Tom Woodhouse, on his home show, representing Pantside Amateur Boxing Club, we're up at 46 kilograms for this against KLAYSON Young. Two very lengthy boxers, one trying to hold off the other trying to narrow that distance and put the pressure on Richie.
Very, very impressed with the jab of Young. You can see when the action started, two lovely left jabs, and he catches him again. Very, very firm, authoritative jab, and he's controlling the distance well, leaning back away from the punches and taking the sting out of them. I love that left jab.
Very traditional straight shots.
Nevertheless, obviously Tom is working side to side, looking to get his shots off and push his opponent to the ropes. Nice right hand over the top there.
So no winners, no losers, or no drawers in an exhibition contest, Richie. We saw both boxers clearly trying to practice things, essentially, in that. You could see Woodhouse trying to close the distance and Young taking a bit more time on the back foot, measuring that jab as Woodhouse came on a bit square and a bit lower intensity, but nice to see the technique and the thought that went into that contest.
Absolutely right, and an exhibition is exactly as the word suggests. It's something to entertain the crowd. You try out new skills, maybe you try things you might not otherwise in a contest. But nevertheless, as you say, slightly lesser pace and an opportunity to explore yourself, I suppose. Woodhouse, and I think you hit the nail on the head here, a little bit square perhaps. And fingers crossed he'll watch this back and he'll have a look at that and think, yep, maybe I need to tuck my chin down a little bit behind the shoulder, not be so square, and work behind the jab a little bit more. He was looking for the big shots, some fantastic jab from Young, who tried to control it from a distance, and because Woodhouse was so square, he was catching him each time he threw it. But fantastic jab from Young, great exhibition of boxing. Woodhouse, nevertheless, wasn't to be deterred. He did maraud forward and throw some sweeping right hands, which caught Young. But I felt Young did very well on ropes as well. You see a lot of people, they go back to the ropes, especially amateurs who perhaps in the early part of their careers, if you like, will sometimes lose a bit of composure on the ropes. But what Young did, as soon as he felt himself touching the ropes, you'll notice he was sliding along the ropes, getting himself out of trouble, whilst at the same time keeping his chin relatively low so he didn't catch any sweeping shots from Woodhouse as he came onto that right or left hand.
And they'll both learn from each other. They'll notice things that what the other one did that maybe they can pick up and try and improve on or replicate. But it's nice to see. It's never nice to see a weight discrepancy like we had here, but it's nice to see an exhibition and just that the boxers can be active, because we've had 2 or more years now of disruption with the pandemic, and clearly from shows like this, Welsh amateur boxing, it's active, it's alive, and it's kicking on again.
Absolutely, yeah, and that contest was very much in the spirit of an exhibition. Sometimes you get some fighters in there who will try to impose themselves and get a bit nasty, and I've seen exhibitions called off.
There's a famous one that was called off with Joe Kozagi and Robbie Regan all those years ago.
and even one of my boxers, Jake Anthony, had one which turned into an absolute barnstormer with the current Welsh champion, Warburton. When they were both very young, before they turned pro, they went at it. and the referee, I think, called that one off. But you know, these things happen. That was very much in the spirit of things. I think that, as you said, participation is starting to gain momentum. But nevertheless, I would like to see parents out there more, and perhaps, and maybe this seems a little bit overcritical, take from it what you will, but sometimes parents can just, you know, be dropping their kids off at gyms and stuff like that, and they think the hard work needs to be done by the people in the gyms. I'd like to see parents taking a bit more responsibility and perhaps coaching their kids themselves a little bit, taking them out for runs, taking them on pads, buying them bags. And obviously I know that times are very tough at the moment, but boxing is so accessible. The equipment is not super expensive. It's definitely something that, as a parent, you can take an interest in and encourage your children to do. And what it helps you to develop is obviously a sense of discipline. The fitness is absolutely out of this world, and it would be fantastic to see even more of a resurgence. But you know, we are on an upwards grade as far as Welsh boxing goes. And
the great thing about boxing as well, you touched on it, is so accessible, and everyone's so welcoming as well. You can walk into places like we are today in ABERGAVENNY Amateur Boxing Club, and there will be someone who will give you their time, they'll give you their help, and they'll share their experience and knowledge.
Absolutely, and that goes at all levels. The coaches are absolutely fantastic. I've already mentioned that they give up so much of their time for free on an amateur level, but it goes right through the game. And one thing that a lot of people that I am involved in who do a lot of media work are shocked by is just how accessible pro boxers are. Because of course it goes without saying that on the lower levels and on the fringe levels, when you're a prospect, you have to sell tickets in order to make a success of yourself and build your career. And then even at the higher levels, that's instilled upon you. You see a lot of these footballers, and they, you know, get up to all kinds of things, or get up to no good. I've read so many biographies that are full of, you know, thrilling stories, but at the same time, it's behaviour that's frowned upon. You don't see that too much in the pro game, because boxers are taught that they've got to be fan-friendly, they've got to be accessible. And whilst they do build up fights with a little bit of naughty behaviour, it's kind of to be expected. But when you're actually alone with them, they're very personable. They're incredible characters. Derek Chisora, for example, who I've met, can be very abrasive on camera. I'm not going to go into his Vaseline introduction that we all saw on Sky, but at the same time, when you're alone with the guy, he's very personable, quite intelligent, very well spoken, and I think you'll find that 99% of pro boxers are that way. And when you look at the amateur game and the way it develops into the pro game, people are really, really shocked at how much they can get out of pro boxers as opposed to pro footballers, and to a certain degree as well, pro rugby players, who have media teams set up around them specifically to deal with that aspect of their lives, and they're very standoffish sometimes. And you can understand why, but at the same time, I don't think you get that from boxers.
And that point is best demonstrated by the host of this show, former British, European and world champion Gavin Rees, hosting it at Pantside Amateur Boxing Club, working with the roots, the grassroots of amateur boxing, with a number of schoolboys on the show. And here are some of the highlights from that action. And we begin with Pat MULLANE from CHEPSTOW Amateur Boxing Club against Evan LADE from ABERGAVENNY Boxing Club in a skills bout. And Richie, they wasted no time in getting stuck into each other.
Absolutely, and LADE needs to keep his left hand a bit higher, a bit closer to his face, because MULLANE isn't reluctant to throw that right hand, sometimes sets it up with a jab, and then a looping right hand over the top, which is finding the target. There it is again.
Well done, lads. Pat MULLANE in the red corner, Ethan Laird in the blue corner.
And we follow with Tom Jones from Pantside Amateur Boxing Club against Ashley Burton from Eastside Amateur Boxing Club. A minor bout fought over 3 1-minute rounds at 31 kilograms. Richie, we can see here the boys, although maybe young in years, quite established in their stances and getting to grips with how amateur boxing works.
Absolutely. Jones moving in and out, trying to obviously control the distance, and a lovely left hook as he steps in there. Caught him flush in the face. Nice shot there by Jones.
The winner in the blue corner, Ashley Burton.
And we continue with the second appearance for the night for Chepstow Amateur Boxing Club. This time Jesse Williams taking on Liam Walton from the home club Pantside Amateur Boxing Club in a minor bout at 36 kilograms. Richie, we can see the boys again wasting no time getting stuck into each other. What are the lessons that they'll be taking from this?
Well, it's very close action. Both of them are getting stuck in. Williams is looking to score with that left hook. You can see that he comes out of a low crouch, and you can see that that's a weapon for him. But they're both going for it, and it's a very even contest.
The winner in the blue corner, Liam Walton.
We're slightly heavier this time at 47 kilograms for a schools bout fought over 3 1.5-minute rounds between Tyler Trim at Pantside Amateur Boxing Club and Owen Scanlon from Eastside Amateur Boxing Club. Richie was seeing the boys here, both trying to impress on the front foot.
Yeah, definitely. And Scanlon trying to control things, maybe a bit more from distance with left-rights. But of course, Tyler Trim, as you'd expect with Gavin Rees as one of his trainers, very aggressive, coming in a bit low and looking to score with big shots.
The winner in the blue corner, Owen Scanlon.
Alfie Early from Chepstow Amateur Boxing Club faced Evan Lloyd from MAERDY Amateur Boxing Club, one of the busiest boxing clubs in the Rhondda Valleys. And we're seeing here that proper amateur schooling, aren't we?
Absolutely, yes. And Brett Parry, great coach, and I'm sure he would have wanted his boy to work behind the jab and try to control the space, the distance. You can see that he's on the back foot, and Early's just trying to close that gap. Perhaps Evan needs to keep his head up a little bit, but that lovely left-right combination finding the target there.
And it's quite a clash of styles between the shorter boxer and the slightly taller with longer levers.
Absolutely, yes. But nevertheless, both boxers coping with their styles very well and both very aggressive. Nice work inside there from Lloyd, going to the body.
The winner in the red corner, Alfie Early.
And we continue with Terry Mullane from Chepstow Amateur Boxing Club, welcoming our first visitor from over the bridge, Hayden Young from LYDNEY Amateur Boxing Club. We can see that Terry's got his Welsh vest on, Richie, clearly a talented amateur, and neither looking to rush their work here. They're trying to pick their punches and work from range.
Absolutely, both boys looking for opportunities. When the action started, you could see that Young scored with a lovely left hook, but Mullane countered a few moments later with a lovely right hand through the centre. Although he was caught on the ropes again, I think, with the left hook, both boxers looking to obviously get on the front foot and cause some damage.
The winner in the blue corner, Hayden Young.
Richie, thank you for joining us for another episode of Boxing in Wales. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure. I'm grateful.
And if you've enjoyed it at home, please make sure to like, comment and subscribe. If you've got a show or a boxer that you want us to shine a light on, slide into our DMs, let us know, and we'll do our best to shine that spotlight, and we'll see you next time.